what's our agenda? We want to introduce and give our purpose. Purpose of autumn 2024 budget, key changes affecting charities, the impact on the financial operations. And then we've got to make sure that we are complying with the new regulations. There are some strategies we need to ensure we maintain financial health in our organizations. And then we have a question and answer session, and then the closing remarks. I'm going to go very fast because we have limited duration, a limited amount of time for this session. But other details in other webinars, we'll break them down. That's how we're going to work on this. Okay. Why do we have the annual autumn budget in the country? It is a financial plan by the government, as I said earlier on, and it outlines the actions they intend to take. And it also ensures transparency and accountability. Now, for the 2024 autumn budget specifically, the government has confirmed that the purpose is to fix foundations of the economy and begin a decade of national renewal. We hope this takes place and they're successful. We're working together to ensure that this happens. So for us as charities, the decisions that they made have affected us. So in what areas have this affected charities? When we're thinking of charities that employ staff, charities that are involved in housing, private school fees, we've had a lot on that. Charities that are in that handle welfare matters, education matters, and the fact that the government is saying we want to close the tax gap.
118.
What's the impact of this on givers? So we're talking about the key changes. Number one is for those that employ staff. We know that there is an increase in employers' national insurance. There is a change in thresholds. Employment allowance, though the level has increased, the amount of employment allowance has increased. So this will help some charities. But for other bigger charities, it has a lot of financial implications. And then there is the increase in minimum wage rates for 18 to 20-year-olds. And then there is an increase in national living wage rate from April 2025. This is going to impact the charities that have employees. Now, the government has also said they're spending more to prevent homelessness, which is an area where some other charities concentrate on. And then there is consultation in progress over social housing. Another thing is that in the private schools, they've got to now be paying VAT and business rates. The business rate relief has been withdrawn. And then there is the other area where we're talking about work and welfare. There is an increase of 2.3 billion in the core schools budget. So some charities that are involved with the schools, this will help. And then there's a Connect to Work program where some charities also concentrate on. This will help them in that area. And then we've talked about, and we're also thinking of, the government has also spoken about Breakfast Club. I know some of those that registered the gift services of breakfast clubs. This will help very much in this area. And then there's the children that have special education needs and disabilities. The government also is pumping money into that area. And then funding for Holocaust education. I'm not sure many of us are involved in that. So with this in mind, we're now asking ourselves. After this has happened, what's the impact we've gone? I've gone a bit ahead of myself. Are we still hearing me? Because I seem to be frozen. But can we hear me? Please confirm.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so thank you for that. So we're saying that from April 2026, the rules, tax rules are changing a bit. That's as when we're thinking about gift aid and the rules surrounding it. This is to ensure that only the intended tax relief is given to charities. And then the government is also clamping down on on tax abuse, because it's believed that so many charities have abused this relief that the government has given. So there's a clamp down on it, and the government is thinking there'll be 20 million pounds that will be, that this will contribute to the economy. And then there's a clamp down on non-compliance, because there are some areas, in many areas, that charities are not submitting returns, whether we are talking about returns to the Charity Commission or HMRC and so on. So the government is clamping down on non-compliance as well. And then the Charity Commission also has additional funding. This is in order that they might be able to support charities better and increase in monitoring compliance. We'll see. Remember that I said something about compliance regulations earlier on. So when all this is happening, the thing is, what impact will it have on charities? Because they want to start monitoring financial mismanagement in charities as well. So let's go on and see what happens next. I want us to go to the next slide. Now, in thinking about, we've said something about increasing costs, I believe. In thinking about the givers to charities, those who donate, whether it's in church collections or donate to the charity or give, through their company or as individuals. What's the impact of the decisions that the government has made? What impact will it have on them? Number one, higher costs for giving companies. We recognize that from higher employer NI, which we spoke about earlier on. Then we also have higher taxes for individual donors. There are some donors that maybe they're at, at the basic rate of paying taxes, but now they're going to the higher rate. So in some sense, some will be able to give more to the charity, but it will have an impact on individuals. So at times we might decide, okay, we know that the donations are a bit lower, so we've got to look for other ways in which to raise funds. And then we also say for givers, consider gifting shares to the charity. We'll come back to that if we have a moment. And then I'm also saying that to givers, the higher rate, those who are taking up to the higher rate because of the tax changes, will see that they are able to claim back even after having paid, even when the charity has claimed gift aid. That's the impact for givers. Now, what's the impact on charities? Increased costs, possible lower donations. The charity may need to consider requesting shares if people want to give shares to the charity, And then, on the other hand, Maybe some of the charities online today will have access to more grants, especially those charities that are involved in social care and in support to children with SEND. We'll come back to that. I mean, we've mentioned that earlier on. Okay, so some will have access to more grants, and some may also experience less donations because of the situation of individuals that have been gifting or given to the charity. So for charities that are experiencing all this, we want to see what part are we supposed to play? Number one, we want to ensure that we're complying with the regulations. Like we said earlier on, the government is endeavoring to maintain financial transparency. The responsibility is also for the trustees of charities to ensure that their charity is maintaining financial transparency and reporting. So the areas that we need are, we've got to ensure we are following the Charities Act. We're maintaining accurate records. We're submitting our annual returns. That's usually 3 or 4, depending on if we're making returns to HMRC as well. We have about 3 to return to the Charity Commission. We should ensure that our charity is adhering to rules, in our governing documents. Then, talking about HMRC, we should make sure that our returns are timely and that we respond to communications from them. Now, how do we ensure there's so much to do? How do we ensure that we are adhering to the rules, and as at that point in time, we are still also ensuring our charity is running well? Number one, we need to learn to ensure we make time for planning, budgeting, and reviewing. Each charity, it will help. I mean, even though the budgets and the planning are not going out to other people to review, within the charity, if we want to ensure that we are maintaining a great financial health, we need to plan, budget, and review, just as the country is doing. So we should ensure that we also establish a reserve fund. We're not spending everything that's coming in. We've got to find a way. We've got to, when we are planning, we've got to ensure that we consider how can we ensure that we're having reserves. Every month, are we going to set aside a particular percentage of the grants and donations and subscriptions that we receive, or how are we going to do that? Then I mentioned a point there, regular financial health check. What's happening in other charities? What's happening with us? Are we having more income, more funds being raised? Is it less? Do we need to cut costs in some areas? Do we need to involve others, in some areas on pro bono basis to help our charity? Do we need a professional to come in and help us put things on track? We've got to consider that. And we've got to be reviewing as we go along. And then I spoke about implement risk management practices. Ensure that maybe individuals cannot override the controls that we have in place. Ensure that people don't have access to the information that does not apply to them, to private information, confidential information, all those things. Then we need to be accountable. Internal reporting, quarterly reporting, reviewing amongst all the trustees in an open way. We're not going to be keeping some information from some and that kind of thing. And then the decisions are being made on information, sound financial information. And I mentioned again there, timely statutory reporting and engaging the services of professionals where need be. Now, it seems to me that I need to quickly look back on an area, because it seems we have jumped some things. But let's see how we can do this. Let me just have a quick look at it. I am very sorry about this. So, private school, working, okay, right. Just a moment, please. Okay, I'll just mention the fact that I mentioned something on impact on givers. I'll go back there. Okay, impact for givers. I said something about gifting of shares. And we'll see that givers these days can decide to gift shares to charities. We can encourage that amongst the donors to our charities. I'm going to share another screen shortly, so please bear with me. I just want to do I've done a quick calculation there of what the impact of gifting of shares would be for charities. Let's have a quick look. I'll stop sharing the screen and then I will start sharing the other one. Just a moment, please. Okay, just a moment, please. Share screen. Please mute yourselves. Please mute yourselves. Thank you. Okay. Are we seeing my screen now? So I was talking about gifting of shares. Can we see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I was talking about gifting of shares to the charity, that encouraging donors. This is an example of a person who is a higher rate taxpayer. This particular person, he bought, I think I'll need to zoom, so we zoom out, zoom in a bit. Okay, so we can see better. He's a higher rate taxpayer. He has listed shares. He bought them for, let's say, £20,000 and later sells them for 40,000, making a capital gain of £20,000. Now, if in 2022 he had sold those shares and deducted his annual exemption allowance of 12,300 from it, he would have paid a tax of 20%, which 20 of 7,700, which means he will have a capital gains tax bill of 1,540. Whereas if he had sold the shares on the 6th of April, 2024, which is just gone by, he would have deducted an annual allowance of £3,000. We know that the annual allowance for capital gains tax was reduced earlier on in the year. And he would have paid a tax, a CGT of £3,400. But now, since the last budget, if Isaac sells his shares on 30th October, or as we've passed it in December or January, he would still deduct an annual allowance of £3,000. But he will now pay tax at 24% CGT because the CGT level has been increased. It gives him a tax bill of £4,080. So I'm saying to people who give to charities that why not give that share to charities? Why not consider funding a charity with that? Because that will be exempt from capital gains tax. You will not pay taxes on it, and the charity will be able to use it later on, or maybe immediately, depending on the need for that charity at that point in time. So that is an example of the impact of having somebody gifting shares to the charity. But besides that, there have been other areas that we have covered, which the impact of the increase in taxes is having on individuals, and then it will transfer to charities because individuals donate to charities. But government has also given grants in some areas that we have discussed earlier on, enabling those charities that are involved in those areas to have grants they can call up on. But where there are no grants, what happens? We've got to look into that. We've got to ensure that we as charities, that we're making an optimal use of the funds that we have and the funds that are coming in. I'll close that up and go back to where we were before. And again, please, if you have questions, please, I'll give you a chance to ask, because I was thinking we will, but the system it seems to be playing up at the moment. Thank you. I'll start to share again and go back to where we were. Once it starts sharing, then we will be able to continue. Just a moment, please. Right. So where we are now is a quick summary of all that we have discussed today. Today we have reviewed the key changes in the autumn 2024 budget affecting charities. We spoke about areas of where the charity has employees. We spoke about the fact that the government has increased funding for some charitable purposes. We spoke about the fact that the impact of increase in employer NI can impact some companies that donate to charities. We've spoke about the fact that there are areas where individual donors could be affected, and they may make decisions on either increasing their charitable giving or reducing it. And the fact that the gift aid, because for donors who step up to the higher rate, there's some clawback that they can do when they give to charities. So some can decide to increase their giving to charities. Some can decide to reduce because of living costs issues and that kind of thing. We spoke about the fact that the charities must ensure that they're adhering to regulations, especially now that the Charity Commission has more power, has more funding. They want to really ensure charities are adhering to regulations. We spoke about the way we can comply to regulations. We spoke about the fact that we have strategies in which we can make maximum use of the funding that we have and ensure that we're having reserves. So those are the areas we shared on today. Now, can you tell me, do you have any question? Or maybe I should say, please go ahead and ask your questions. Please, you can ask your questions or add your questions to the chat, whichever is convenient for you. Okay, maybe I should start it off and say that for your individual charity, I think, how do you think this government, the purpose of the government, you can kind of ensure your charity is ensuring accountability to the government, accountability to the powers in charge, to those who have the authority to request for information from your charity, or to those that can help your charity? I don't know if anybody wants to answer that question. Seems I have silence here. Okay. Maybe I will.
I would say that it is to ensure that those who have the burden of responsibility, i.e. the trustees or the board of directors, that they are...
Sorry, come again, please. Repeat yourself, please.
I would say that it is to ensure that those who have the burden of responsibility for the governance of the charity, that they are au fait with the present law, the current law, the changes in the law, make sure that they are complying with the necessary requirements to ensure that the charity is run to the governing document and to what the government has now set out. It may be quite complex, so it's either attending webinars or bringing in professionals or doing what they can to ensure that, or even contacting the Charities Commission for information so that they can be updated with what is necessary.
That's very true. And that's fantastic. I have somebody else giving you a thumbs up, even for your answer. That's awesome. And then I have an answer in the chat saying timely submission of reports to Charity Commission and due diligence checks by trustees. Thank you for that. The important thing here is that trustees have to realize that a lot of responsibilities are on their shoulders. And you cannot give an excuse that I don't know. As Diane said there, you've got to be aware of what your responsibilities are, as whether as financial officers in the charities, or as trustees in the charities, you've got to be aware. And then when you need professional advice, don't hesitate to request for professional advice. Yes, it might mean paying something, but it will mean that it's an investment for your charity if your charity can move forward and make sure that everything is in line. Thank you for that, Diana. Now, what did we, how do I put it? Talking about the organizations where perhaps a lot of their donors are now on a higher level of income, or they're now paying more taxes. They're on the higher level. They become higher rate taxpayers. How do you think you can kind of encourage them, to kind of make donations? What's the information? You can't go to individuals and be telling them that. But what's the information you can put out? Maybe on your website or somewhere, that where you are talking to people and encouraging them to give to your charity. What do we think we can do about this that may encourage givers in this area? I mentioned something about it earlier on. Okay, if we can't answer it, I'll just want to say that to encourage us that there are times you need to add some of this information in your leaflets, in some areas that, if you've become a higher taxpayer, remember that you can claw back some of this tax relief when you give more to the charity, that kind of thing. Of course, they'll need to make returns. They'll need to make self-assessment returns in January. And that's the way in which they can claim back some of the taxes they have paid, even though you'll still be entitled to the gift aid amount. But some, they can also still claim back. So you can find a wording, or if you need information in that area, find a wording or talk to us about it, how you can, declare such things and make sure that the donors in your organization are well informed. So I want to thank you for having listened to us today. We have some offers for everyone that has been online today. Because our support, the major mission that we have is to ensure that all the charities and businesses that we come in contact with, or that we're providing services for, that they're able to thrive in any economic climate. Part of this will be to keep them informed. Part of it will be when we're working with them. Part of it will be, at times we may need to introduce somebody else to them, signpost them to other people and other services. We will usually do that. So with this in mind, what we know is that, number one, we are ready to give a reduction in our fees to reduce to review the internal controls that are existent in various charities. And then also on our services on management, accounting, and reporting and decision making. Please, are we seeing my screen where I'm sharing what our offers are?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. And also, we have a tax card. Sorry about that. We have a tax card which it tells you what's happening in the country at the moment. If you want the tax card after the presentation, please email me on info@aeaccountax limited. And the other thing is that we also can send you a link to the recording of the webinar and also send you snippets of the major points that were made during the webinar if you want to refer to anything, or if you want to ask us further questions on what we have discussed today. We are ready to do that. And yes, this is me, really. Any other question before we go? Because we might be finishing like 3 or 4 minutes before time, or 5 minutes before time. If there is no other question, I would like to remind us of some basic things that I mentioned. I'm going to share my screen again. Please take note of that area. Just a moment again. Okay, I'm sharing my screen again. Maintaining financial transparency is important. Ignore the texts that were under it. Follow the Charities Act. Maintain accurate records. Adhere to the rules of the Charity Commission. I noticed with some charities during this year that members of the board, some members of the board are not aware, were not aware of the information or the requirements in their governing documents. Please, I want to emphasize to us as charities that we should ensure that the members of our board are aware, or every member of the board should have a copy of the full governing document. They must be able to read it. They must be able to understand it. It's got to be something that it needs to be discussed in our trustee meetings. That's one. Another thing also is about the finances. I noticed that in some charities, the issues of the finances is just left to the treasurer or the treasurer and the financial officer or the finance team. I want to encourage us to ensure that in each of our trustee meetings, maybe we are having the board meetings monthly or quarterly. Some charities do every 6 months, which I think is too far apart. Make sure you are discussing the funds. Make sure you know what's happening with the funds. Make sure you know where you are. Do you owe anybody? Who owes you as a charity? Who do you owe? What bills need to be paid? How much do you have in reserves? We need to be conscious of those figures. We should not leave it to the treasurer and the finance committee only. Thank you. And the other bit is also that if you need our services in these areas, talking about, apart from the general services that we give, part of the services that we give, as I've told us, is looking at the internal control, writing out internal control documents for you, and helping you to stay on track with the Charity Commission. So I hope we have learned something this afternoon. Is anybody there that wants to share with us anything that he or she is taking away? I see somebody saying yes. Yes. Alexis, you are asking about sharing the presentation. Do you mean sharing just the screen? That's talking about what we're talking about. That gives an outline of what we're talking about.
No, like
Alexis?
share this presentation via the email after the meeting. I was just wondering if you have like the presentation you just discussed here, if you can share it via the email.
Okay, Alexis, the link will be shared. Yes, you can get the link tomorrow at the latest. Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay, you're welcome, Alexis. Yes, any other person? Is there something that you are taking away this afternoon? I'm concerned about that. So that it's not that we just came to talk. I value your time. Please, can somebody tell me? Alexis said he was just going away. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much, Abim, for this. Is very informational and informative, and it reinforces the importance of having robust financial compliance and being aware of the latest updates from the government. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
You're welcome, Diane. Thank you for that comment. Very much appreciated. It's encouraging. We'll be having another webinar in 2 months' time. I will notify us of the date of the webinar and where we're going to, talk robustly about budget and budgeting within the charity itself, so that, you are prepared for what is going to happen or what you are expecting, and you are able to handle it, in a way that ensures that you still take a stand. You are still standing and not going down like so many other charities have done recently. So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you all. I appreciate your time. You will get a feedback form after the session. Please kindly tell us what your mind is and what you would like us to concentrate on the next time. Also, apart from our own webinars, I also take webinar with a professional body, which I will invite us to. The next one will be in February with them, but the next webinar for charities will be in January. So I look forward to seeing you then. So thank you, everyone, and bye for now. Bye for now.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye for now. We're ending the webinar now. Bye for now. End meeting for all.